our connection. I'm Mira Rubin, here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is cognitive dissonance. when when there are two opposing ideas that we hold, or where we experience a vast inconsistency in thinking, and trying to find ways to reconcile the irreconcilable. So it should be an interesting conversation, because human beings are massive contradictions, and trying to make sense of that terrain can be more than a little challenging. So it should be an engaging conversation. Anyway, before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your organs, um, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning. And good morning and welcome to everybody else who's joining us. Cognitive dissonance. There's been a lot of that for me lately, I have to say, where I just cannot reconcile certain things. I can't understand, or I haven't found a way to understand some of the what look like obvious realities to me, and what makes sense to me. Obviously, this is specific because we each have our own perceptions, and when what we think of as reality doesn't align with those perceptions, it kind of makes us shake our heads and go like, what, like, what's going on here? And I have to tell you that I have experienced quite a lot of that over the past number of years, in our political environment, and with so many of the quote unquote realities that we're facing collectively, and how we're responding to those things. And what I've found is that there's just no reconciling some of these things. Like, there's no way to make sense of it, at least that I've not yet discovered a way to make sense of so many of these things. And that brings us to the crux of this conversation, or the heart of this conversation, which is to be able to learn to hold polarity, to hold contradiction, and to find there is a unifying force or energy, or place there is a place of unification where the polarity disappears. It's not always easy to find. It's not within our standard operating mode, right? It's kind of moving from the two sides of a coin to the edge of the coin, for instance, that unifies those two sides. It's jumping to another level of perception and awareness that provides the container in which the polarity resides. So this is an important conversation, actually, because we have constructed an experience or a culture of dualities: good, bad, right, wrong. You can go on and name on and on and on all these polarities, all these opposites. And it's this notion of dualism that is actually a foundation of the notion of separation, right? Self other, for example, that's part of that duality and that polarity. And just the nature of the word polarity is kind of opposition and resistance, kind of fits in there as part of that conversation. And we've been talking a lot about the paradigm of separation, and this duality is foundational to it. And if we look at reality, which more and more I'm having greater and greater conviction that the reality is way more than 50% subjective, way more. But when we look at reality, we can see that if we look closely, for the most part, things aren't black and white. Things aren't on one side or the other of a polarity. That there's this gray, there's this spectrum in between, that there are gray areas, shades of gray, that there's a blending. And I think that it's within that blending, within that area of gradient, that we get to find unity, that we get to find connection, even across our divides of belief. So one of the themes that we've been speaking about, and probably will be speaking about quite a lot in the coming future, is building bridges and finding places of connection. And connection doesn't mean adopting one another's rallying cries necessarily. It doesn't mean sharing common beliefs on all levels. But what we can do is one of the ways, I think, toward these reconciliations of polarity is by rising to this other level of what contains those apparent conflicts. And so we may have very deeply held beliefs that oppose one another. And the likelihood is that there are other beliefs that supersede those conflicting beliefs that we can connect on. So we may have very different political beliefs in terms of how to address certain things, but I am inclined to think that there's another level of belief that says, well, we want the best for people. And maybe that's pie-eyed on my part, but that there's some kind of unifying belief that says this is a place where we are actually on the same page. And we just differ in the methodology for going about implementation. And it reminds me of the quote attributed to Einstein to the effect of, you can't solve a problem from the level of consciousness from which it emerged. And so what it requires of us is to exercise our creativity, to be able to stand back from the myopia of our very rigidly and rigorously, maybe rigorously, but rigidly defined beliefs, to step back and find a broader perspective, literally. So this is an interesting thing. When we're in fear, when we're in fight or flight, our actual vision, field of vision, literally narrows. And if we think about that, it kind of makes sense in terms of being animals in a fight or flight circumstance where it's important that we focus to be able to address a threat, at least historically, right? But maybe what is more important is to find a way to broaden our focus so that we can see a bigger picture, so that we can respond in more appropriate ways rather than react. So I recognize that we're talking about defying nature in a certain way to be able to overcome or transcend this biological response to fear and anxiety, and to deliberately take our fate and our perception in hand, to consciously choose to take a breath, step back, expand the view to be able to see a bigger picture, which can then allow us to recognize the way that things might be interacting. So what prompted this is something that let me see how not black and white things are for me. And to be able to, again, this was in the political sphere, and I don't want to get all political and specific about it, although I'm sure my leanings are apparent. But to find that things aren't as black and white as I was inclined to think they were. I know I'm speaking really abstractly here, but that's deliberate. um, it's just very, very interesting to recognize that, we can be aligned with people we who hold beliefs that we consider abhorrent, and then find a place where there's actual alignment. And what it occurs to me is that we can use those moments, those places of dissonance, those places of alignment that are unexpected and unanticipated and kind of rattling, that make us sort of shake our heads, but recognize that it that that might be a point of connection. That might be a point to build bridges where there's maybe a brick in the wall that's a little looser than some of the others. And what this is showing me is how I'd built that wall, how I had built this kind of brick wall. Like, I'm on this side of the wall, you're on that side of the wall, and there wasn't much way to get across that wall or through it. And I think this is the conundrum that we face in this time, where there's so much upheaval and likely a lot more to come, to find points of true human connection, and through that human connection build bridges, build community, and have room for difference, to find a way to accommodate difference in a way that supports us all. It's calling us to a level of creativity that will undoubtedly expand our capacity. I'm committed. Like, my personal commitment is consciousness. Consciousness for myself, consciousness for the planet. And I've said before, I really do believe that our greatest responsibility as light workers is to bring the light, ever more so in the face of darkness. And that means being willing to shine that light on our own darkness and our own biases, our own rigidity, our own places where we're closed off to real observation and awareness. It's easy to get into a rut of belief and stand for that and march for that and fight for that, and I think it's so important to be able to be in inquiry rather than to be rigidly committed to a belief for its own sake, where the belief becomes the thing that guides us rather than our ability to evaluate and discern and question, to look with curiosity. Maybe there's something here that I'm missing. Maybe there's more information available to me. Maybe there's a new perspective. Maybe I can entertain another point of view. And here's the thing, I think that this is something that most of us are prey to, is that we take a stand and then it becomes dangerous to truly entertain another point of view, to actually allow ourselves to step into someone else's shoes, because it could threaten our belief. It could threaten the way we're perceiving something. And it would mean that perhaps we need to change our structure of belief, or maybe even who we think we are, to look at something differently. And so facing that threat, or embracing that opportunity to see something differently, is a scary thing. To actually embark in a rich and deep and heartfelt inquiry about something, instead of asserting loudly that I know, to be in an ongoing inquiry and exploration, to be moved by curiosity rather than dogma. I think that this is something that's incredibly important as we move through these contentious times. And it's challenging. It takes courage. It takes courage to be willing to entertain a different vantage point, to try to really understand another person that holds beliefs and ideas that look like they're in direct opposition to what you believe. I've been as dogmatic as the next person, at times, for sure, and say, no, there's no there's no exception where this is how things should be. That's it. And when we have that certainty that becomes unquestioned, I think that there's a danger to that. So to be able to have the courage to inquire, to question even our foundational beliefs, to be in an inquiry around it, to let it be a living conversation. That's really what I'm talking about. To let something be a living conversation rather than an emphatic conclusion. Because we are living beings, and we are in a process called life. And life is not stagnant, nor is it absolute. And as we can allow ourselves to be in that place of curiosity and that openness, we can allow for change. So what just came to mind was that there used to be a very deeply held belief that the earth was flat. And It was just the truth. It was also the truth that the universe rotated around the earth, and it was heresy to speak otherwise. And these are two pieces of information that have changed radically through inquiry. So you may have heard me talk about, well, this is my current hypothesis rather than this is how it is, right? When we have the willingness to be curious, even about the things that seem to be the deepest truths, that may be the beginning that allows us to build bridges. Just playing with that notion. I invite you to try it on and see what that's like. What is it like to be in the question rather than the answer? So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network, Facebook page, and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share me and Enlightened World Network. The links are in the description. And as always, it's forever a pleasure, a deep, deep pleasure, and a profound privilege to have the opportunity to share these morning musings on what it is to be human. So until next time, so much love to you.